This is me. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks, Nicole. So Nicole is actually our digital success manager and our Nelson MindTap trainer. So I will be alluding to her throughout this webinar. And we've also got Theo on the line. He'll be chiming in as well in this meeting. So welcome to today's webinar. So my name is Robert Yen, and I also have Sarah Hamper with me, and we're both authors on the Maths in Focus Maths Standard 2 books. From now on, our standard books, which were previously called New Century Maths, coming under the Maths in Focus umbrella brand name. So to make things a bit more simple. So up on the slide there, we've got the previous editions from 2017 to 19. So New Century Maths was Maths Standard 1 and 2, and then Maths in Focus, Maths Advanced Extension 1 and Extension 2. Okay, but in the new editions, we've got for 2025, 2026, they're all called Maths in Focus. They all have a similar kind of cover design as well as page design. we've prepared quite a detailed PowerPoint and presentation. But if you saw that first slide, we did say that we will allow this PowerPoint to be downloaded. We'll make it available to you at the end of the presentation. So don't feel like you have to take photos or take lots of notes. You will have access to it. And we won't be going through every single dot point of the syllabus. We'll just be concentrating on what's new and what's different, and also what's been taken out. So let's have a look at the new syllabus. The 2025 syllabus is a refresh and declutter of the 2017 syllabus, and it's got more precision and elaboration. Probably 15% change at most. So there's some new content, some removal of content, and some movement between years 11 and 12. And even some changes have reverted to the previous syllabus, which indicates that NESA have really been listening to teachers and paying attention to the feedback. So both Sarah and I feel it's quite a good improvement on the current syllabus. So as I said, we'll focus on what's new, which we'll highlight in green, and what's been removed, which is highlighted in red. Maths in Focus is strictly mapped to the new syllabus and informed by 6 years of the new HSC exams. So we've got the advantage now that we've been teaching the new syllabus for 6 years and we've been examined on it. So we're starting to get a really good idea of what the topics mean and what it covers. And our authors have studied those HSC exams and now include HSC style questions in all the chapters. So we feel that Maths in Focus teaches in the spirit of the syllabus. It also follows a syllabus change in years 7 to 10. So now we have a renewed 7 to 12 maths curriculum. So you can see there, we've got New Century Maths for years 7 to 10. So we've got 6 books there. And then we've got also a further 7 books for senior maths under the Maths in Focus brand name. So I'm now going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to talk to you about Maths Standard 1 and 2.
Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to talk about some of the things on the slides here. So with Maths Standard 1 and 2, just remember there's one course in Year 11, and it splits into 2 courses for Year 12 with common content across. So for differentiation with the Maths in Focus books at this level, we publish the 2 levels. So in Year 11, there's a Pathway 1 and 2, and they're written by separate author teams. So you might just see the book on the right there. It says Pathway 1, and you can see the authors there. I think there's another picture in a moment. You'll just see the difference between the 2 pathways. There it is. So the new course, you might or might not be aware, it no longer shares common content, although they had those HSC common exam questions with Maths Advanced. That's not the case anymore. And with the Year 11 syllabus, there's no longer that sort of rhombus symbol in there that you can see there on the screen to mark what was essential content for Maths Standard 1. That's not included anymore. So I'm just going to go through inclusions as Robert said, there's things that have come back from previous syllabuses. There's things that have been removed. So they're all labeled. So we've got the green and then there's red if it's gone. So you'll just get a quick overview. If you haven't been, maybe you've looked at the syllabus, but not too closely yet, we can just identify for some different topic areas, sort of in a nutshell, what's happening in each section. So we will keep moving through these, but as we said, you'll get the slides at the end, so you'll be able to look in more detail. It might help with your programming. Oh, could we just go back one slide? So with the formula and equations there's more use of spreadsheets. That's what's new in most of the standard topics. You might have noticed that looking through the syllabus where they're actually included as the dot points. Those road safety formulas, there's speed, there's things like B8, blood alcohol, all that's concentration. They're all still in there. You've got the medicine dosage formulas, they're still there. There's changing the subject of a formula. It's no longer just linear though. And what has come back in previous syllabus, you might recall, teaching previously, there were quadratics in that format that's there. So they've returned to for changing the subject. Then we're moving on to linear relationships. So, the usual suspects are there. We've got y equals mx plus c. We've got the linear modelling. But what's come back in is the interpolation and extrapolation. And then we've got direct variation. In earning money, so if you look down the list there, you've got all the ways of earning a wage, salary, overtime, all those things. We've got a new item there that's the sole trader's income. So we haven't had that in the standard course or any maths course previously. I'm just aware that it's I think it's in the business studies curriculum. So maybe they're trying to get some cross-curricular things happening, but that's new for us to be teaching in Maths Standard. You've got government allowances, but what's been taken out are the work allowances. They're no longer in there. We've got annual leave loading. You've got all that income tax, the Medicare levy, but we've now got pay-as-you-go tax tables. I think there's a picture that might come up. Yes. So, when you read off a table and you have the payroll deductions that way. So that's a new element in standard. And then we have managing money. So things like percentage increase, decrease, all the profit loss. GST's there, but value-added tax, the VAT, that's come back in. So it wasn't in the last one. So other ways in other countries that people use the GST and what they call it. So that's made a comeback. New things are buy now, pay later schemes. So I guess that's the modern way of buying something. So that's come into the standard course. We've got term payments and you've got the costs of owning a car. We've got household budgeting, but a new element there is those emergency funds. So where people might save up some extra money on the side, the dog needs surgery at the vet and a car breaks down or something happens and you need some money extra. So that's a new thing that we haven't had in our syllabus before. Moving on to the areas with measurement. So we've got the metric prefixes, they're new, nano through to tera, and just there they are there. Probably they've become a part of our everyday language, I guess, with all the digital things that we do. So some of those the students are going to know about, but they're explicitly in the syllabus. Pythagoras' theorem is explicitly in measurement again. And elements that have gone, there's no more measurement error. So that was moved to stage 5. So it's not new at stage 6 anymore. So that's not in there at stage 6. Energy and food is gone, and the electricity, the kilowatt hours, not there anymore. You've got the perimeter and area, the irregular blocks of land and the trapezoidal rule. It's up to 4 applications. We have surface area in there. There's volumes, pyramids, and the new bit's cones. But back with the surface area, there's not pyramids and cones. But with the volume, there's pyramids, and the new bit is cones. Time and location. One of my favourite topics. Still got longitude and latitude. Still got all the calculating time differences. The removed element is timetables. So I guess people don't really read a timetable anymore. It's probably a bit old-fashioned. So not in the syllabus anymore. There is the 24-hour time. You've got the 15 degrees with the longitude difference is 1 hour. On the new reference sheet, if you haven't seen that yet, that's one of the elements that's actually provided now. So they actually give that to the students. And then we've got all those time zone differences, international and Australian, and we've got daylight saving. They're still in there. So most of those elements are still there. Okay, moving on to those networks, paths, and trees. So the thing is that this has sort of been chopped in half, and there's elements of it now that are in the Year 11 course for standard. So you can see there the list. They're things that have been done previously. So it's now sort of half of it's in Year 11. And if you do standard 2, there's going to be more networks in there. Can we turn the slide? Yep. And then moving on to data analysis. So this slide just tells you on the move from the Year 12 for standard 1 and return for standard 2. You've got those statistical investigation processes and surveying and how all that is constructed. You've got types of samples. We've got types of data. They've always been there. The new elements are, I guess, infographics is back in stage 4. So I guess it's pulling it through all the way to stage 6 now, as well as a way of reading data. We've got line graphs, the divided bar graphs, sector graphs. With the modality of data sets, you'll see the green one there is uniform. So that hasn't been in standard before. There it is down the bottom. There's a nice picture. And you've got the other ones, uni, bi, and multimodal. So just uniform's the new one. So in measures of centre now, we don't call it central tendency. If you're looking at the syllabus, measures of centre and spread. What's gone? Those Pareto charts, they're out. We've got no deciles and percentiles anymore. And we are focusing on population standard deviation for the next syllabus. Sample standard deviation has been removed. So there's no sort of confusion about which one. Do we need to know both? It's quite explicit in the syllabus. No sample standard deviation. So there's some interesting pieces there. The clusters and the outliers, they're still there if we're analysing data. So just to show you a slide, this is up the top there. It says this is pathway 1 for Year 11 standard. This is our previous sort of headings and each chapter, and you can see where they've been struck through there. Healthy figures is now called safe driving. Interesting figures is fine. That's the network chapter that has to come into Year 11. Point number 6 there is taking chances. So the probability has gone to Year 12 for standard. So there's nothing in Year 11 with standard for probability. So that's why that's out. Chapter 8's just had a bit of a title change there, and the others have been there previously. There's those elements still in the syllabus. If we go to Year 11 with a pathway 2 on the left, you can see similarly managing money and the probability again. It's all in Year 12, so that's where the networks chapter is, and interest and depreciation is in Year 12 as well.
Okay, Sarah, we've got a question from Mandy, which is a good time to answer this. It's the same course in Year 11 for Maths Standard. So why have we published 2 books, or how are the 2 books different? Is that something that you can answer briefly, the difference between the 2 books?
Well, I think even some of the slides there, I mean, you need to go away and have a look at them more carefully and digest the information. But, there's a certain pathway that you're on if you're doing standard 1 as opposed to the pathway heading to standard 2. So I would be accessing the different ones with just the different pieces from the syllabus. You might miss something otherwise. There's just some subtle differences that we spoke through on some of the slides there.
Yeah, I mean, we've always published 2 books for Year 11 because I think it's a very popular view amongst teachers that there should really be 2 maths standard courses in Year 11 as well. And Nessa has listened to that feedback and decided, no, that's not the way to go. But so we've published a Pathway 1 book for students who are going to go on to Maths Standard 1. So both books cover the same topics, all of them, but just at different depth and emphases. So the Standard 1 book isn't so exam focused, and it's more practical course, as you can see there on the screen. So it teaches in short chapters, but a lot of like 14 chapters, and then the Pathway 2 book teaches it in 11 chapters. So there's probably less revision there, not as practical as the standard Pathway 1 book, but more focus on the exam as well. And the Standard 1, that there is an exam at the end of Year 12, but it's the HSC exam, but it's not compulsory, it's optional. Okay, now let's have a look at Year 12 Maths Standard 1 and 2 together. So I'll let you continue there, Sarah.
Sure. So we've got algebraic relationships. So we've got the simultaneous linear equations, the graphical solutions there. But what's come back and note it says standard 2 there? It's the algebraic solutions that you would do. So that's come back in. We've got the break-even points. They were there previously, still there. Now standard 1 only, so you can see whether there are more differences now. We've got linear and exponential relationships. You've got those practical graphs, where they're changing water levels with the different containers. But standard 2, they've got quadratic and exponential relationships, so we've built a few more in. And what's new there, the practical limitations of these models. It's also still got reciprocal relationships, the inverse variation, still there. And then in investment, so what's moved from year 11? Remember that chapter was crossed off. So we've got simple interest, we've got compound interest. Standard 2 only does shares, and new is comparing types of investments. And then we've got depreciation and loans. So again, moved from year 11. Now in year 12, we've got straight line depreciation. There's the declining balance depreciation. So they're all in there together. New is the short term and the long term loans. And where I was talking about in the year 11 course, there was some items about buy now, pay later schemes. It's comparing different types of loans with those. So I have to do an analysis. There's reducing balance loans, they're still there, credit cards still there, but new is comparing types of credit. And we have annuities, the annuity tables are still there. The removed section is the recurrence relations. We've got the applications in there still, superannuation, there's savings accounts, there's loans, they're all still there. So recurrence relations, not something we've really done heavily in New South Wales, but it's gone now. Moving on to trig. We have right angle trig. Remember, that's standard 1 and 2 at the top there. True and compass bearings. Standard 2 only are the points underneath that. So we've got all the non-right angle trig rules, sine and cosine rules. Note it says excluding the ambiguous case for the sine rule for standard 2. We've got the area of the triangle formula, and we've got those compass radial surveys. Then we have ratios and rates. So we've got the ratio problems. Continuing on, they've been there before, the scale drawings, all the plans. Standard 2 only is the land perimeter area. There's volume of rainfall, there's energy consumption. You might recall from a previous syllabus or two ago, the capture-recapture technique. It's actually explicitly stated in this syllabus. I think it was suggested as an application in the one we're finishing off with, the one we've been doing for about 5 years. So this time it's embedded, actually stating it has to be taught again. So if you remember doing that previously, it is back. We've got rate problems, converting rates, fuel consumption. They've always been there. What has gone from standard 1? There's no similar figures. Those target heart rates are gone, blood pressure, no longer. And new for standard 2 are distance time graphs.
Yeah, and I do notice that I get the impression that the standard course seems to be getting easier because there seems to be a lot of revision of stage 4 and stage 5 work. So there's a bit of decluttering, but there's also making the content easier.
Okay, so on to network. So remembering some of it's now moved to year 11, and this is standard 2 only. So if it's standard 1, then they stop doing networks at the end of year 11. They wouldn't see any in year 12. So standard 2 would be doing these things here, flow networks. The new part is flow capacity by the saturated edges method. We've got maximum flow, minimum cut theorem. And then we have critical path analysis. Remember, this is just standard 2. So project networks. New are the dummy activities. They have been in our books. It's the same with the previous slide. It just stated that. We've got the flow times. This new part, though, is Gantt charts. So you might not have heard of those before. Is there a picture coming up underneath? So this is a Gantt example of a Gantt chart. Robert, did you want to talk about it? Or?
Yeah, because I didn't know what a Gantt chart was. And then when I looked it up, I realized I use Gantt charts in my work as a publisher at Cengage, because when you're publishing any textbook, it goes through all these different stages, and some are dependent on each other. and this is a Gantt chart is basically these swimming lanes underneath the calendar that tells you when every part, all the different activities or tasks need to be done. So you can see a list of tasks there, and you can even see my name where I do the publisher check. So it just means that when something starts and when something finishes. And I'm guessing with the new syllabus, students will be expected to be able to interpret what a Gantt chart is and be able to represent it as well. But I don't think they'd have to physically draw one, maybe probably use technology to draw it.
Yeah, I think they're going to use a spreadsheet for that. But even in the syllabus, there's quite a simplified sort of diagram with the block sections, like what that one's showing there with the blue parts. So you'd think they'd focus on the interpretation, not drawing it up. That would be a bit tedious, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, bivariate data analysis. Now this is standard 1 and 2, except where it says standard 2 only. So we've got the scatter plots, the line of best fit by eye and technology. They're in there. Still, we have correlation, but what has come back in is the correlation versus causation idea. Standard 2 only have those 3 dot points underneath. So you've got the regression line and correlation using the calculator. You've got interpreting gradient and the y-intercept. And then you've got the scatter plot and the regression line with a spreadsheet. So standard 2 only there. Then moving on to this idea with the probabilities. So remember, there's no probability in year 11. It's all in year 12. So it does quite specifically say here on the slides, you've got tree diagrams. New for standard 1 is that they're with replacement only. Standard 2 includes the probabilities on the branches. Underneath, you've got expected frequency. Then another new element, applications of statistics involving probabilities. And then we've got the product rule for standard 2 only. You've got Venn diagrams, we've got two-way tables. Then the normal distribution, so that's still in there. This is standard 2 only. You've got the empirical rule, those percentage values, you've got the Z-scores. I do think it's a relief, though, the last point they've removed are those Z-score tables that, well, personally, I think they were well beyond a poor standard student having to read and interpret all that. The advanced students struggle well enough with it, so we can sigh with relief perhaps that those ones have gone. So we have the Year 12 Standard 1 book here, and you can see the things that have gone and what's come in. So the probability there on Chapter 9, taking chances. Finding the right path has gone. On to the next one. Then we've got the standard 2. So we've got ratio and scales. Then we've got the standard 2 section, which has the networks in there. And then we've got probability. And then because some of those other pieces have gone, Chapter 9 is called rates and energy now.
Okay, I'll just we'll just pause here because we've finished covering the math standard courses, and there is a question here from David, which made me laugh, and I'm sure everyone will laugh. Does the credit card exercise include date of purchase and date of payment in the number of days? I don't think that's part of the syllabus anymore, and counting days. I mean, it might be in the exam, in the exercise, but they don't make that distinction about counting the number of days, like whether the first and the last day are included. So I think even in recent HSC questions, they tend to tell you how many days there are, so that you can just do the calculation. I guess the other question, which I haven't looked in the syllabus, is whether it's simple interest and compound interest. I mean, the current syllabus says compound interest. I imagine the new syllabus would continue with that as well. Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's any other questions on the chat. I can't see any.
There was one about the publishing dates, but
yeah.
What do we have them? But they're coming later, aren't they?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a later slide. Yeah. Okay, so now it's up to me. So I'm going to talk to you about a survey that I did last year, an online survey, where I asked teachers what their views were on, because I knew that we were publishing new editions of textbooks for senior maths, and so I wanted to know their views, their opinions, or what they thought was the best features to have in a senior maths text. So I asked this question, name 3 features of a senior maths text that would be most important to you. And I deliberately did not give them any options because I wanted it to be open-ended. I wanted, you know, the answers to be unprompted, but we did have a lot of common answers, and this is what they were. Number 1 was syllabus coverage, but without anything extra. Number 2 was variety of exercise questions from simple to complex. Number 3, plenty of clear worked examples. Number 4, HSC or exam style questions that go beyond drill and practice, because I mean, this is a common complaint that textbooks are good at explaining the course and providing questions, drill and practice questions. But when students do an exam, they often flounder because they haven't had enough experience with the questions, the rich, multi-layered questions that involve interpretation, analysis, communication, writing conclusions, that sort of thing. So that's very important. And number 5, finally, was correct answers, no errors.
Sorry, Robert, if I can just interrupt, there's a question there from Mandy. So it says, is there a change of focus towards more working mathematically in terms of new overarching outcome, which have been carried through from year 7 to 10? So I think you were just addressing that in your
point
there.
Yep. So the answer is yes. Is there anything you like about Maths in Focus? And these are the top 5 answers. Number 1, syllabus references at the start of each chapter. Number 2, it's well set out. It has chunked content. Number 3, the worked examples explained well. Number 4, the accurate answers. So I think we are, you know, we won't get every question 100% when you've got thousands of questions in the book, but we're getting there because we do provide work solutions as well. So you'd think that with work solutions, our answers are pretty accurate. And then finally, number 5, good achievable exercises. Then we asked, is there anything you don't like about Maths in Focus? And we only got 2 common answers, and that was number 1, the lack of exam style questions, and number 2, not enough harder questions, not enough range or volume of practice questions. Now that's really valuable feedback for us, and we're happy that there's only 2 things, because that means we can focus on working on those 2 things, no pun intended. So that's what we've done with these new additions. We've actually made an effort, all our author teams have made an effort to write more exam style questions, those scaffolded and unscaffolded questions that you find in the HSC, as well as making some the questions broader in terms of level of ability, level of challenge. Okay, so these are the features of the new Maths in Focus. Some are already existing, so some are old, but there are also some are new. And Sarah, you're going to lead us through this.
Sure. So point number 1 there, focusing on explicit syllabus coverage. So if you look at how the red section is on the left there, like the rectangle, syllabus outcome codes are in the table of contents with the chapter outlines. There's more to come on this slide, isn't there? And then you can see this is just an example. So if you were at the beginning of a chapter, this one happens to be networks. You've got the exercises and what's in them, but on the left of that, again, you've got the outcome codes. Underneath, it tells you what parts in the chapter you'll be doing as well. You've got the dot points underneath. So you can see there's an index there of all the chapters.
This is a table of contents.
Yeah. Showing you all the codes down the side with each of those. The other thing is there's a syllabus reference grid. So we've got to focus on explicit syllabus coverage, and we do have teaching programs as well. So if you look in this grid, you can see for algebra at the top there, for example, and you can see which chapters on the right, they've color coded which ones link with that. So you can get an overview of the entire book for each of the strands, and sort of some drop-down dot points like subheadings, and where their syllabus references are, and then where the chapters that focus on those parts are. So the other thing is we focus on the clear explanations for our wonderful 21st century students. We've got the chunked content. We've got a reading level appropriate to these students. There's that focus on literacy. If you're anything like what I'm doing at my school, you know, we're always talking about mathematical literacy, not just drill and practice, because we are working towards what the HSC is expecting as well, and it's embedded in the syllabus. So we really want maximisation of our lesson time in this. So again, here's just an example from Networks. You can see some screenshots there of how the content, if your students need the diagrams with the definitions wherever possible, so they can maximise how they're taking in the information. On the right there, we've got 5 sort of set points to work through as to how you would look at that. And then you've got the example underneath. So try to present things in many different ways.
I've noticed on the left there's some words that are in bold red. So those words are glossary terms.
Glossary terms, aren't they, from the syllabus?
Yeah. So they'll appear at the back of the book as well with the definitions. And then with the solution to that example 8, you'll notice it's step by step as well.
Yeah, so going over the page, we've got to focus on those clear explanations so the students can look through this as well, look through step by step, and then how to do finding the shortest path. It's given per step there as well to help them, give them a guide. And one of the things I really like is the colour coding of the exercise questions. So if you've had our 7 to 10 books at all, you know that that's in those books. It's also now extended through to the stage 6 books. I have some staff in my faculty. We've got some changing career teachers, later in life sort of thing. And sometimes they're asking questions like, oh, what sort of range of questions should I be giving the students? So it is a quick way to be able to look at an exercise. And you've got Green's Foundations telling you on the bottom right there. Mastery is the blue. So they're all also in shape, not just colour. And then you've got complex. So it's not to say there's the same number of each in every exercise. I mean, that's not really possible. It depends on the concepts that are being looked at, but you can certainly see wherever possible the range that's required for those ideas that are being looked at, whatever the lesson is on.
Yeah, and those shapes there were an idea of one of our editors who asked us, well, what about students who are colorblind? Shouldn't we be doing something for them, provide more access for them? So that's why you've got those shapes there as well.
Point number 4, new focus on HSC style questions that we've been talking about that go beyond just drill and practice. They're throughout the chapters, wherever possible. We still want to give students a good scaffold, of how to do concepts on the way through, but we want them to work towards the ultimate goal of being able to apply their knowledge. So there is a sample HSC problem at the end of every chapter. Now, I think that's just in standard 2. That's not standard 1, isn't it? I think that's somewhere written on a slide somewhere.
That's right.
Anyway, so you might remember about the old crickets there that were in the HSC a couple of years ago. There's a question in the textbook that we have on that. So we've got those application questions in there. They're asking them to analyse the model. And then there was a sample HSC question there. So they're at the end of every chapter. So it's not that, we do have just HSC questions that are like sample ones in chapters, but we do have one set at the end of every chapter that is actually a sample one. So there's an example of that.
I think the one at the end tries to include as many skills as possible that have been learnt in the chapter. So it's like an exemplar style question. They're not past HSC questions, by the way. They're ones that have been written by the authors to mimic that style.
Point number 5 is focusing on pedagogy to help teachers teach as well. So the skill check that we have at the beginning of our books, that's in standard only. So you won't see that in advanced or the extension levels. So on the right, we've got investigations. So, that one says use a calculator. It could be a spreadsheet. Here's an example of using a spreadsheet with there's a website on that one as well. That's okay. And this one shows some formulas to use. So it just varies on the chapter, what's required from the syllabus. So that's calculating the measures of centre. On the right, there's some current information, best-selling car brands, things to look at to be able to analyse the information there. And, we've got the sample HSC problem again. There's another example. We've got a study tip. They're only in the standard 2 books. And then we have the chapter summary. So just looking at the blue on the right there, we've got the flow chart at the bottom, which is always helpful. Different types of students learn differently. So that's a good visual. But above that, it does say quite explicitly, we do this in each chapter. Again, this is just an example from Networks. What you learned in this chapter on the left where to find it in the chapter on the right.
Yeah, and then that mind map exercise at the end where we provide a template for students to copy and then fill in the details themselves.
At the end of every chapter, so focusing again on pedagogy to help the teachers teach, it's like a chapter review. You can see down the side there's some green, there's some blue, so and it goes back to a green. So the exercises from that chapter 6 there are on the right. And so it might just vary. So it's not like everything's green, then blue, then red. It just depends on the concepts, you know, what the chapter's doing. So we've got a good variety of the different codings as you work through. And there were multiple choice as well as free response questions there, you might have noted, just like HSC exams. Then we've got this mathematical literacy that's a big focus. So there's a glossary. We've got the verbs at the start of the book, mathematical verbs. We've got a terminology list at the start of every chapter, and then there's a glossary at the end of the book. So you can see those 3 elements. There's just some snippets from the Maths Standard 1 books only. Yes, so because they're slightly different in the target audience, they have a chapter problem and solution, and they've got a keyword activity at the end of every chapter. So this one's safe driving. Here it is coming up underneath. So there's the chapter problem. You've got the solution, and then we have a keyword activity, sort of like a word search to help the students make sure they know their key terms.
Okay. Yep. I think I'm not sure if there's any more questions before I start to unpack the Maths Advanced and Extension.
There aren't any
syllabus.
at the moment, I can see.
Okay. So the main difference, the main change with Maths Advanced is that that removal of common content between Maths Advanced and Maths Standard 2. So to have no more statistics takes a big chunk out of the course, and so it declutters the course. It gives you more time it gives students more time to learn the core topics, which is basically functions and calculus. So no more annuity tables. And just a reminder that our Extension 1 books include all the Maths Advanced content as well. So they are bigger books. So these are the Margaret Grove books, Maths Advanced and Maths Extension 1. And then we also published the Maths Extension 2 book, and they're written by Jim Green and Janet Hunter. So our Extension 2 book just contains the Extension 2 content. So it is a smaller book. But so an Extension 2 student would need to buy both the Extension 1 and the Extension 2 books. And at this point, I do want to acknowledge the work of Margaret Grove, who was recently awarded an OAM. So in the first King's birthday honours back in 2023, I've been discovering so many new things about Margaret, yeah, where to start? Okay, well, basically, I wanted to acknowledge her because she started the whole Maths in Focus series back in 1992. Some of you may remember that time, over 30 years ago, because it was a breakthrough series that explained maths in a more clear and concise way. And then during her journey, she's also completed a master's degree in pure maths at the University of Sydney. And but throughout her life, she's been interested in many different things as well. So one of the things that you may not know of is that she's been the long-term president of the Australian Breastfeeding Association. I guess this comes back to a time when she had her own kids. And then she's also been an executive leader of several community choirs. So she's just been back from Europe, where she's been leading a tour of community choirs, which has become a big thing in Australia now. And also for her service to education as a maths teacher and a maths author. So she was awarded an OAM back in 2023. And if you ever read the Sydney Morning Herald and look at the letters pages, letters to the editor, you'll notice that sometimes there's published letters from Margaret Grove of Concord. Well, and I've always wondered whether that was the same Margaret Grove, the author, and the maths author, and it turns out that it is. So now you know, I guess. Okay, so let's have a look at the Maths Advanced course. So Maths Advanced always starts with functions and algebra and functions. So if you have a look at that, look at the green and the red there. So what's been returned to the course is the discriminant and quadratic identities. And what's been returned from extension 1 is the quadratic inequalities. What's been removed is all that phrasing about one-to-many, many-to-many terminology, which was good conceptual knowledge, but it didn't actually lead to anywhere. And you could only ask so many exam questions on that, as well as the sum, difference, product, and quotient of functions. And then what's been removed to extension 1 is the introduction to polynomials. Okay, the quadratic identities, that's what that example 31 is. So we used to teach it, then we stopped teaching it for a while. Well, now we're going to go back to teaching it. Okay, more with functions. So there's the usual functions that we have, that we know. There's finding the equation of a parabola, which is new. So you might be given 3 points. So that's where those quadratic identities will be useful. What's been returned is piecewise functions. Direct and inverse variation are still there, but now we are expanding that to variation to the square, the cube, the square root, so to the power of x. And then we've got semicircles on the y-axis, which is another new thing. So that's basically the diagram that you can see there, where you've got, which is not a function, it's just a relation there. And then with trigonometry, no big changes. Area of a segment has been returned to the syllabus, and then 3D trig has been returned to extension 1. Okay, so pretty traditional. Trig identities and equations. We've got sec x, cosec, cosec x, and cot x, but the graphs of them have been moved to extension 1. Now, I don't think it's because it's harder necessarily. I think sometimes they've decided there's too much content in Maths Advanced, so they move some of it to extension 1 as well. Okay, introduction to differentiation. If you look at that, that's a pretty traditional, straightforward topic. The only thing that's different is that acceleration's been moved to year 12 because you don't learn second derivative until year 12. Okay, next topic is exponential and logarithmic functions. Pretty much the same, but log scales and applications has been moved to year 12 as well. And the big change for year 11 Maths Advanced is that the transformations of graphs or functions has been moved from year 12 to year 11. And not only that, they've got more explicit methodology written into the syllabus. So you don't just have that general formula, but you've also got these mappings where for a reflection, you'd be replacing y by negative y. For a translation, you'd be replacing x by x minus a. For dilation, you're replacing x by x over k. And it's sort of, I mean, I guess we teach transformations, probably the pre-transformations in year 10, but now it makes sense why all those general formulas for all the different curves and all the different functions and relations have that way. So this is this is how horizontal dilations is covered in the book now. So I'll give you, I mean, you can study that later yourself. And then in our Maths Advanced textbook, we've got the same structure. So we've got the chapter outline with the codes there. We've got Nelson MindTap, a blue box that shows you all the resources that are aligned to that chapter. We've got the terminology list. We've got the technology, and we've got these fairly straightforward explanations of theory. So we explain why is it x minus a, not x plus a, even though, you know, why is it x minus a when we're adding, then there's a good reason for that, and it's got something to do with the inverse function. And then we've also got the color coding again there. Okay, there's no green in this exercise because it's the end of chapter 10 and it's the last exercise. So the work is getting pretty hard because we're graphing combined transformations. And then we've got the sample HSC problem again at the end of the chapter. We've got the test yourself. And then one thing that Margaret likes to do is to also have a challenge exercise after the test yourself. So that's in the Maths Advanced and Extension 1 books only. So you've got an exercise that's all red questions so that, you know, people can't complain that there aren't those challenging questions for the students who are really good with their deep understanding. And then, okay, so continuing on with Year 11 Maths Advanced, there is now a topic. The topic called probability has been expanded to probability and data. So it's a bit more explicit now. So we've got new things like set theory and notation, such as the empty set, disjoint sets, subset, and then that absolute value symbol is now being used to indicate also the number of elements in a set. So that absolute value of x means replaces n of s. So the number of elements. And then what's been moved to year 12 is discrete random variables. So it joins up continuous random variables. And then what is also new is there is some statistics, but it's how it's applied to random variables and probability. So you've got things like relative frequency of data, cumulative relative frequency, histograms and polygons, and all those things you'll know if you've taught discrete and continuous random variables, you know that those will be knowledge that we have to build on to teach random variables and probability distributions. Okay, so that's the number of elements symbol again there. So you've got the number of elements in A union B is this number of elements in A and B minus the overlap, like on the Venn diagram. So if you look at our Maths Advanced book now, the new one, so you'll notice that the discrete probability distributions is crossed out because it's gone to year 12, and then transformations of functions has moved into year 11, and then probability is now probability and data. And then let's have a look at year 12 Maths Advanced now. So as I said before, log scales has been moved from year 11. So you've got now the transformations of the trig functions. You've got the modeling of trig, exponential, and log functions. And then the next topic is sequences and series. And you think there wouldn't be that much change with this very traditional topic. Well, there is a bit of a change, and that is we're not going to use Tn or Un to represent the general term. We're going to use An. And then on the reference sheet, the formulas are going to look like this. So notice how instead of Tn, we've got An. And even that n over 2 a plus L formula on the second line is now a plus An. What else? Sigma notation makes a return, as well as the AP-GP terminology, so the arithmetic progression and geometric progression. The recursive definitions are out. So just slight tweaking that's going on over there. Okay. I might pause here if there's any questions or comments. No, it doesn't look like it.
I don't think so.
Okay. Differentiation in year 12. Not much change. Differentiability at a point has been returned. I think it used to be in year 11 a while back. Also differentiating sec x, cosec x, and cot x, but by using the chain rule, so it's not on the reference sheet. And then integration. Right, we're going to go back to calling them primitives rather than antiderivatives. I don't really know why, because that kind of puts us in the minority. All the other states of Australia and maybe even the rest of the world happily calls them antiderivatives. There used to be a bit of confusion about whether we do areas about the y-axis, okay, because it wasn't explicitly written. So now it has been explicitly written. I think we all teach it anyway, and we've certainly been teaching it in Maths and Focus. And then areas between curves has been moved to extension 1. Again, I don't think it's because it's harder. Maybe there's just too much content in Maths Advanced. Okay, applications of calculus. Again, fairly straightforward, fairly traditional what we've got there. Exponential growth and decay has been returned from extension 1, but you've got everything else there is fairly straightforward. And then that brings us to random variables, which is now we've got the discrete random variables joined up with the continuous random variables. We're also going to do the mean and variance of a continuous random variable as well now. And you can see it there on the reference sheet there. Okay, so that's new. So yeah, so I guess it's a bigger topic now. We still do normal distribution and Z scores. What's been removed is all the statistic stuff, all the linear regression, and all the percentiles. And then finally, financial maths. So again, we've got the removal of annuity tables and recurrence relations. So we just do now loans and annuities by the old-fashioned method, and that is using geometric series and technology. And then our year 12 book looks like this now. You'll notice it is a bit decluttered now because there's no statistics. We've got modeling with functions there instead. We've got discrete probability distributions there. Transformations of functions has gone to year 11. Okay. All right. Now let me quickly go through, I'm conscious of time, Maths Extension 1. So these are the changes in Maths Extension 1. So it starts off with more work on functions and algebra. So what's new is cubic inequalities of the factorized form like that. Why are they factorized? Well, it's so that you can graph them and then just look at where it's above or below the x-axis. Okay, what else? We're used to graphing the sum of two functions. Now we're going to be also graphing the difference of two functions, but we're not going to be graphing those square root relations anymore, or the product of functions. With inverse functions, we're doing the point of intersection of a function and its inverse. And then polynomials goes back to what it used to be. It's a completely extension 1 topic. Okay. New terminology, which is really old terminology, because strictly speaking, you should be talking about the zeros of a polynomial rather than roots of a polynomial. If you want to use the term roots, it's got to be roots of a polynomial equation. Multiple zeros goes to year 12. And now we look at further trigonometry. 3D trig comes back in. But what's been moved to extension 2 are the T formulas and the products to sums identities. What's been moved from year 12 is the auxiliary angle method. And what's been returned to year 12 are those inverse trig functions. So this is what one of the chapters in our Maths Extension 1 book looks like. And you'll notice that whenever we include Extension 1 work, we put a nice purple badge on it to let you know. So that's whether it's in the chapter outline, in the chapter objectives, even in the exercises, we show you which questions, even part of a question may be extension 1. But there you go. We've got the color coding there still. Okay, continuing with year 11 Maths Extension 1, we've got the permutations and combinations topic. And I don't know if you'll be happy to know that the pigeonhole principle has been removed. I think maybe it was because you couldn't really do anything much with it. And you could only ask so many questions on it as well. And what has been returned is the binomial theorem. The current syllabus was quite unclear about what we meant by binomial expansions. So we've gone back to the old course where you do things like finding a particular term and proving identities, but without the use of calculus, because this is a year 11 topic. So the extension 1 book looks like this. Okay, so you've got permutations, combinations, and the binomial theorem, and all the other subtle changes are within each of those chapters. Now remember, the extension 1 book includes all the Maths Advanced chapters or topics as well. So you've got 12 chapters covering the course, and you've got those purple badges showing you which one is extension 1 content only. So you've got that syllabus grid there again as well. And then with year 12, we've got mathematical induction. What's been removed is recognizing when proof by induction is not appropriate. And vectors, so big changes in vectors, especially the way we print vectors in our textbook and also in the exam. We're not going to be using that squiggly line and the tilde symbol underneath when we print it. But obviously when you write it on the board or when students handwrite it in their books, they'll still use the squiggly line. But in print, they'll just be bold. And then introduction to 3D vectors will be also done in extension 1 now. The projection formulas are now made more explicit. So there's your reference sheet there. One thing I forgot to mention about the reference sheet is that there will now be a separate reference sheet for advanced Extension 1 and Extension 2, so that those students in advanced won't be confused by all these extra formulas that they've never learned. So there's 3 separate sheets. So in the advanced exam, there'll just be the advanced reference sheet. In the Extension 2 exam, there'll be all 3. Okay, the path of the...
Yep. Robert, there's just a quick question there. Where can they get a copy of the reference sheets, the new ones?
Oh, okay. NESA have published them. So it's on the NESA website. Yeah, and yeah, so and yeah, and yes, and just watch this space too. We're publishing our copy, our version of the reference sheet as well. So yeah, we'll be sending them out or making them available soon. Also moved Extension 2 are the vector proofs in geometry and the force vectors. And then what's next then is the inverse trig functions. What's new is whether they are even, odd, or neither, and the transformations of them. Yeah, sorry I'm rushing through this, but I'm just very conscious it's 5:27 now. Further calculus skills, what's new? Derivatives involving parametric equations and the derivatives of inverse functions. But the rest there, you already know. And then with further applications of calculus, there's exponential growth and decay has gone back to advanced, or that related rates of change, Newton's law of cooling, multiple zeros, has been moved from year 11 to year 12. Areas between curves has been moved from advanced. And then with differential equations, I think we're probably calling these the direction fields slope fields anyway, but slope fields is now the accepted term. And I think it's probably the term that's used around Australia and around the world. And then finally, the last topic. So we're not going to teach sample proportions anymore. We're going to teach Bernoulli and binomial distributions, but sample distributions has been replaced by sampling distributions of the mean and the central limit theorem. So if you did first year statistics at uni, you probably know about it or remember it, but because it is something that's more common or more commonly learned than the sample proportions. So we're not going to be doing the normal approximation for binomial distributions either. We're going to be using technology instead. So our Extension 1 book, the Year 12 book, now looks like this. There's actually no change in the names of the chapters, but what's inside the chapters there are probably some subtle differences. Nelson MindTap is our new digital platform. So it's only available to schools who adopt Maths in Focus. Like you can't get access to these resources if you just buy one copy. So it comes with an ebook, it comes with chapter PDFs, comes with videos and over 100 worksheets. And then for teachers, we also provide topic tests, teaching programs, work solutions to every exercise. There's an example there on the right there. We've got a test bank for creating tests. And you can also customize the chapter resources for different groups of students. And you can also, Nicole, who was talking before me, who was introducing or convening this webinar, you can book in a Nelson MindTap demo with Nicole by writing to her at that email address. Now, to give you some more key information, I want to bring on Theo from our learning consultant team, and he's going to talk to you more about when these books will be available. So that's to answer one of the questions that came up on the Q&A. So over to you, Theo.
Thank you, Robert. Hi, everyone. Just so quickly, yes, availability and pricing wise, publication of all Year 11 Maths Standard Pathway 1 and 2 Advanced and Extension will be coming in November and October of this year. As you can see, online page proofs are now available for standard and extension. You can see that as well it's been put in the chat by Nicole. If you go to that link, you'll be able to request those page proofs to view right now as well. And as Robert mentioned before, we do have available sessions if you'd like to look through Nelson MindTap and take you through the resource. Please feel free to reach out to myself or any of our team members, and we can organise those meetings and demonstrations with you as well.
Okay, so so our three learning consultants in New South Wales, you might know Dion or Sophia or Theo here. So that's their details as well, and their email addresses are also in the chat. All right, I won't have time to go through Maths Extension 2, but you can study this yourself, and I'll just show you the slides. Okay, so with proof, there's a lot more detail, lot more precision, and there's some new things added as well. Okay, so it's a more, I guess it's a more complex chapter now. And then further work with vectors, we've got new things like skew lines in 3D, properties of the scalar product. And then with complex numbers, that thing that was introduced in the current syllabus about the exponential form, well, it didn't last very long. It's been taken out again. But what is new is the complex number system and all those number sets there, as well as the nth roots of -1. Further integration. I already told you about the product to sum formulas and the t formulas. And what's been returned is integrating sine mx times cos nx. Otherwise, fairly straightforward topic. And then with mechanics, this is from the formula sheet, the reference sheet. There is a new formula that's been returned to the course for simple harmonic motion. Again, a bit more detail. So path of a projectile has been moved back to extension 1. And now there's explicit mention of problems involving smooth inclined planes and single pulleys, because teachers weren't sure whether they were going to be in the exam until they were in the exam. And what's been removed is quadratic drag in 2D projectiles, where the resistance is equal to -k times v squared, because that was a bit of theory that didn't really go anywhere. So our Maths Extension 2 book, no change in the chapter names. They will still look like that. Okay. And finally, so thank you for joining us today on this Wednesday afternoon/evening. So if you want a copy of this PowerPoint, you just have to go to that tinyurl.com/MIF Roadshow 2025. So yeah, we have been going around different venues in Sydney and regional New South Wales. So we've been talking to teachers and giving them this presentation. Now remember, this presentation has been recorded, and we will make the recording available to you next week. And if you have further questions, you can write to me at robert.yed@cengage.com, or if you want to find out more about our series, the Maths in Focus series, then just go to our cengage.com.au/secondary website. So just to let you know again, these are your learning consultants. So we've got Theo here, we've got Nicole here. Nicole is our digital success guru, and then we've got Dion and Sophia, who aren't here today, but they've been working very hard in the last 2 months, and again next 2 months as well, trying to get in touch with you and showing you these great new editions of Maths in Focus. So I'm just wondering if there's any more questions. I've been doing a lot of talking because I've been conscious of time. Sarah, did you have anything to add?
A few people put up the links to those reference sheets, the different ones in the chat. So that was very kind. Great. And I just want to add, if you haven't started programming yet, I'm just aware when we go around talking with people that some schools haven't. At my school, we've been using these slides, and we've had feedback from others who've seen the presentation as well. You can actually use these slides to make your life easier and help with your programming at your school. So I think that's a great extra thing that you can have just to help you, instead of having to go and digest all the syllabus yourself, you can look at these at the same time. And I've got new teachers, new maths teachers. I've got some that have been teaching a long time, and everybody's able to contribute and do something with the programming. So I know we're time poor in our schools, but it's just something that does just might make it a little bit easier as you're working through the second half of the year. So hopefully that's a useful thing for you all to use.
Yep, and I do appreciate it's the second last week of term, and for you to be joining us. But you've actually got the best version of the slide and the presentation, because at the start, because we prepared this presentation at the beginning of term, but I think we both have been able to recite this in our sleep now, and we've been updating this PowerPoint every time we present it because we keep discovering new things in the syllabus. So, and also to help us when we're writing these books, it'll be very strictly mapped to the syllabus as well.
Sorry, Robert, we just had a quick last-minute question as well.
Sure.
If the books come with a scope and sequences.
Oh, yeah. Well, they do. They come with the teaching program. So the teaching program has the scope and sequence. If you get in touch with your learning consultant, one of those people, you can also get a copy, a PowerPoint that shows you a detailed listing of the table of contents for year 11, just everything that's going to be covered in year 11 matched, and the syllabus grids so matched to the syllabus. Our teaching programs are also matched to the syllabus as well, and that they also provide things like language of maths, teaching notes and ideas, links to other other topics, that sort of thing. So those teaching programs are to help the teachers teach. Okay. So I'll let you wrap up, Nicole, because I think.
No problem. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert and Sarah, for a great session. It was really great. And thank you all for joining, especially considering it is towards the end of term and you guys have had a hectic term. A recording of this webinar will be sent out at some stage next week. And as Robert mentioned, you can download this PowerPoint by visiting that tiny URL link. And of course, please do reach out to us at any stage should you have any questions or like to book in any meetings with us. But if that was all, take care, enjoy your evening, and we'll chat to you soon. Bye all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.